counselors and the kids too, like they're being so brave and tough. And like, I know there's a lot of them I was able to kind of like get hands on with. And if you guys, yeah, seriously, like you guys were the best. Like, I'm sorry this happened to you guys, but you guys were so brave and tough, and it made me like a better rescuer.
Well, that was a real hero among many heroes. Scott Ruskin, a Coast Guard rescue swimmer who rescued over 100 of the some 500 and more who were in that camp and around that area in the Guadalupe River. And the drama continues to unfold. The news not good, as it's now a recovery operation. We'll have a lot to say about that around the unbelievable rhetoric coming from the left, the pushback from the right, the truth on Wake Up Missouri. Welcome into the program. I'm Randy Tobler, back and thanking Stephanie and Jen for hanging out yesterday and holding forth.
We had a good Monday.
Yeah, it was unfortunate that we had to have this story tarnish what was otherwise a beautiful July 4th celebration and a great weekend. We've got the rescue team from the area here, right, is going down there.
Yeah, Missouri Task Force 1
Task Force 1
left yesterday to go support the efforts in recovery and rebuilding.
I was watching that convoy with looked like a couple of semis, and then they had those like rafty-looking boats that they had on a trailer heading down there, and a number of people in the area out to send them off, right, with well wishes and waves and applause and thank yous. So that's good to see. People from all over, of course, the region down there, but as well as the country, holding out and helping out, so that's great. John is back after a couple days off. Are you rested and raring to go, John?
Raring to go. That was like a 500 to 1,000 year flood event, they said.
That's right, and we're going to be talking with Tony Lupo, our meteorologist extraordinaire and professor of atmospheric science at Mizzou at 7:35. Yeah, 7:35. Tony's going to join us to talk about the lies, the darn lies, and being spread by the media about lack of responsiveness for the NWS. But I saw Kristi Noem talk about how they are up. It really doesn't apply to this particular incident, but they are recognizing the antiquated tools and technology that the National Weather Service has. Sounds like a version 2.0, a redo, a mirror of what we talked about with the air traffic control system. It brought light to that. Not that it was involved in any problems here. People were notified. It was the local lack of, I think, spreading that word in the early hours of that morning on July 4th. Drake over there as well and holding forth. I can't believe what happened to you what's happened to you? You're turning a leaf, bananas and peanut butter. I don't see any of those plastic coated donuts that you can put on the dashboard in the sun and they still hold their own. I don't see any of that.
Wow. I looked at it and I got all of my groceries yesterday and I forgot to grab my breakfast stuff. So I went back to like Hy-Vee where it's normally more expensive. It cost me less than $9 for a jar of peanut butter, 5 apples, and a bunch of bananas. So if you're not eating healthy because you think it's cheaper, you're just wrong.
Okay, well, now that's true. That's true, and the nutritionist will tell you that. We tell people that all the time. If you can eat very healthy, if you make the proper selections, you can do very, very well. And then there was this yesterday, a bit of news that I thought was really heartwarming, as Benjamin Netanyahu visits America for the third time and visits the president for the third time in, less than 6 months since inauguration. Well, I guess a little over. No, it'll be 6 months in July here, coming up in a couple of weeks. Here's a little bit of the what he offered President Trump over, looked like they had, what is this, just glasses of water sitting in front of their very stately-looking china plates there. I don't mean China. I mean, China, as in, the good kind of China. And here it is.
The president has already realized great opportunities. He forged the Abraham Accords. He's forging peace as we speak in one country, in one region after the other. So I want to present to you, Mr. President, the letter I sent to the Nobel Prize Committee. It's nominating you for the Peace Prize, which is well-deserved, and you should get it.
Thank you very much. This I didn't know.
Wow, so formal nomination of Trump for the Peace Prize. I'm sure that those people who award the prize will really listen to Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, they'll probably immediately float that to the top, right?
He's probably not real high on their list.
No, not high on their list, no. But it's good to see. I mean, it's good to see that recognition after there is relative peace in that area, after Trump came in, dropped the big bombs. He got their attention, and they're all like, maybe we ought to pause and think about a little ceasefire. We'll see if that's extended. A.G. Bailey has announced, Stephanie, that he's going to push back against. I'm confused. I heard the story only partially yesterday when you were talking about it, and then I had to go to my mission because I was on assignment. And but the judge, is it the same judge in Jackson County who basically put an injunction on the restrictions on the health care, restrictions and safety kind of things?
Judge Jung, this is actually her third ruling. So if you recall, initially she issued an injunction on some of the health and safety protections for women and children based on Amendment 3. Then she went further and struck down additional provisions. Mm-hmm. That there was a piece of legislation that allowed the Attorney General to immediately appeal. They appealed. The Supreme Court ruled that she used the wrong test in issuing the preliminary injunction, which is kind of a technicality. Yeah. It goes back down to her, and now she's basically reissued the same ruling, saying, no waiting period, no hospital admitting privileges, no licensing requirements. It's pretty horrific. The same
loose, long leash, loosening restrictions that apply to every other office and facility that does any surgical procedure, right? Somehow she's finding a way to not make them comply, right?
Well, Amendment 3 says you basically have an unfettered right to abortion. And so she's saying any of those types of restrictions on abortion facilities aren't consistent with Amendment 3, so she struck them all down.
So I have your four famous words. I told you so, right? I mean, didn't you say that during the run-up to Amendment 3?
Have we heard?
You said that they were going to go crazy with this, yeah?
Yeah.
Columbia Planned Parenthood weighed in on this yet?
I think I'm not. Well, Columbia's associated with the Kansas City one. There's two Planned Parenthoods in Missouri. Planned Parenthood has said they're going to resume abortions essentially immediately. So if you recall, after her first decision, they said she didn't go far enough and that they weren't going to resume abortions. They went back to court. Then she struck down a whole bunch more, and they said, okay, we're back. Then the Supreme Court did what it did, and they said, okay, we're pressing pause. Now they said, we're going to full on go for it.
Man, if these people would fight as hard for, like maybe cancer cures or getting better care for people by lobbying for mental health and, first, maybe start a business and give people jobs so they don't worry about a troubled pregnancy that they think they can't afford the baby and so forth, maybe if they spent all those energies, instead they're spending it on snuffing out human life, preborn human life. Think about that. Think about that in an existential way. I worry for their souls. If you recall, the legislature passed a joint resolution which would send a measure to the ballot that would ensure some protections for women and children, and they've sued over that as well. Over the ballot language. Yeah. They did that last week. So the fight continues. They're dug in and fighting hard. Life is beautiful. Young life is beautiful. There's a young little life across the table from me today because we had a birthday yesterday. Birthday girl. Is that right? Let's see. Birthday girl, you want to speak up?
Yeah.
Yeah? You want to identify yourself?
I'm Amelia.
Amelia. I knew that, but I don't think everyone listening knows that. And you had a big birthday yesterday, yeah?
Yes.
Got a special present?
Yes.
What was it?
The MetaQuest 3S.
Wow. So that's where you wear those, they look like really goofy sunglasses. They're big, bulky things, yeah?
Yeah.
Do you look
that was a weird description, but...
Well, what do you think? I mean, you do look sort of silly when you're wearing them. But what you see is not silly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah?
It's an interesting parenting evolution because you go from, the gifts where you have to just assemble 1,000 pieces to the ones where you have to read the instructions and you don't know how to use the thing. So, she's very excited. We still haven't quite figured out how this thing works. And, I'm pretty technological.
Yeah.
This is like pushing the limits of what mom knows how to do.
Yeah, well, but it's pretty cool. Now, when you have these, do you need to then buy like a software subscription then so that you can go on a tour to the Grecian ruins or to Italy or to Australia? Do you have to buy stuff then to see stuff through these?
That's a Drake question. He has one.
Yes, you do.
So it's not only the hardware, then you need to purchase the software.
You can get a lot of free stuff, don't get me wrong, but I mean, you can definitely spend a pretty penny on games that were developed by big companies.
What Drake's saying is mom should have done more research.
Yeah, right. Sounds like mom didn't quite scope this out all the way. Well, mom's a little susceptible. Well, let's just say she embraces, not susceptible. You embrace new technology, or you're an early adopter.
I would agree with
You're
that.
an early
Although
adopter.
this thing's been around for a while.
Yeah.
So it's on the third version, and I don't know. So, but I'm not really like a gamer, so it's new technology.
I will say I've only experienced the VR once when we were at the Bible Museum in Washington D.C.
Yeah.
And they had a thing there where you can sort of take a tour of the Holy Land, and you do in the VR thing.
Ooh.
Very, very good. I mean, it was really neat. I thought, wow, I could like this because it sure would save on travel expenses. I mean, it's so realistic. It's so realistic.
Right? Yeah, I mean, like, they've gotten very good at it. They're like this, if you go to, like, the rides, the one at Disney, what is that called? Soarin', where you kind of soar through different, have you been on that one?
I haven't been on that one,
it's
no.
really cool.
Soaring?
It's called Soarin'.
Oh.
And you kind of soar through, like, big world.
It's a simulator, like?
It's a simulator.
Yeah.
And that one was pretty cool. I think, there's some good
I like
stuff.
those.
The Sphere has, like, really realistic stuff going on.
I like those simulator rides when you're just sitting on a platform and it's going back and forth and rocking and it's shaking and you're in a earthquake, and the video makes it seem like that.
I'm okay
cool.
with like the ones that have the wind and like the haptics in the seat.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like when it sprays water in your face.
Oh yeah, I'm not that. Yeah, I don't like those.
That was the little rat ride. What was that ride? The rat movie Ratatouille. That ride sprays water.
Probably my least favorite. Have you ever been, Amelia, on the ride with the big rafts down at Silver Dollar City? And you go in the rifts and you get soaked, absolutely soaked. Yeah.
The first time we went on that, everyone. So basically, our entire family was on one side, and there was like a group of friends, and we fell down facing the water, and all of us just completely soaked.
That new one at Silver Dollar City is serious. It's pretty fun.
And no matter how you try to protect the stuff that you don't want to get wet, it is soaked by the time you get out, no matter what you do.
Get a waterproof bag, for sure.
All right, well, young Amelia, happy birthday. You're how old?
11.
11 years old.
Wow.
Going into what grade this fall?
6th.
6th grade. Is that middle school then, right?
Well, Southern Boone Middle School starts in 5th now.
And really?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, so you're a seasoned middle schooler now. Yeah. All right.
Correct.
Cool. Well, happy birthday. Welcome into the program. Thanks for being with us, folks. 573-874-9390. We've only scratched the surface. We'll scratch more with Chris Arps at 6:35 and Tony Lupo on weather forecasting and, epic 100,000 whatever year events at 7:35. The daily DC Rundown coming up 5 minutes.
You're listening to Wake Up Missouri.
President has already realized great opportunities. He forged the Abraham Accords. He's forging peace as we speak in one country, in one region after the other. So I want to present to you, Mr. President, the letter I sent to the Nobel Prize Committee. It's nominating you for the Peace Prize, which is well deserved. And you should get it.
Thank you very much. This I did.
Well, there's BB. Here's Stephanie with the Daily DC Rundown.
Yesterday, Trump welcomed Israel Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu to the White House, and they discussed the Nobel Peace Prize there, as you heard. They also discussed a 60-day ceasefire proposal to pause the 21-month conflict in Gaza. This includes a 60-day pause on the war, hostage releases by Hamas, and increased aid to Gazans. It doesn't include like a complete peace deal, like a full termination of the war, but hopefully this new draft will get the negotiations going. And Trump is, delivering on some of his promises and trying to settle some of these conflicts. And so we'll see if they can get this deal done.
It seems as though Hamas is really wanting some absolutely unrealistic type of concessions, though. So the two sides are still pretty far apart, but you never know. Trump can get a deal done.
And I think the deal includes some provisions for additional negotiations between the two sides. The president today will convene a cabinet meeting at 11 a.m. Yesterday, also out of the administration, we heard that the Department of Justice concluded their Epstein investigation. They said he didn't kill himself, he didn't keep a client list, and all is good. People are real mad about that because, of course, Pam Bondi is on the record saying that the list was on her desk. Randy,
DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
So have you seen anything that you said, oh my gosh?
Not yet.
So
that was a couple months ago.
I feel bad for her because I suspect the amount of papers that were delivered to her. Of course, this was happening very fast, if you recall. I assume her desk, like there wasn't just a single list sitting on her desk. I assume there were boxes and boxes and boxes of paper that were delivered to her office, and she, like everyone else, heard there was a list or knew, and so I'm not down the rabbit hole of saying there was a list and she was lying about it. I just think at that time she didn't have full information.
Would you agree or disagree, though? I got out my generational translator. I think she had too much swag with that whole optical media blitz with a folder and everything. She made too big of a deal of it.
Yeah, I think that's where people are getting really frustrated because it made it sound like there was something there, and now they're saying there's nothing there, and people are mad about it. All right, we also are hearing more about tariffs. Trump told Japan, South Korea, and 12 other countries on Monday that they face tariffs of at least 25% starting next month unless they figure out these trade deals. Of course, he's announced deals with the UK and with Vietnam. He's been negotiating with others, but was hoping for, I think, more progress by now. This new potential tariff war is rocking the markets a bit. So we'll have your report in the morning bell at 8:25. He's also sending letters to other countries threatening them with additional tariffs. So we'll see how that goes. We also found out from the IRS yesterday that churches and other houses of worship can endorse political candidates.
We're going to be asking you a question about what you feel about that. Should your pastor, your rabbi, your imam, your priest be endorsing a candidate in the next election cycle? Maybe we'll ask Chris Harps when we come back at 6:35. propaganda battle going on from the left, claiming that the cuts, some reporting say 20% across the spectrum of NOAA and National Weather Service staffing back in February, had something to do with the lack of early warning for the disaster down in Texas that took so many children's and adults' lives. Some who still are not recovered, those recovery efforts going on. Task Force 1 heading down there yesterday, right, Stephanie?
Correct.
That's Stephanie Bell. I'm Randy Tobler, along with John Marsh and Drake Whitman and the esteemed Tuesday morning guest every Tuesday, Chris Arps, joins us now. Chris, people say it's too early. We shouldn't be politicizing this. Well, we didn't fire the first salvo. We on the right. That came from the left, right? And what are your thoughts so far in terms of the allegations that National Weather Service was understaffed, and now apparently they were adequately staffed, maybe even had one extra, and then local warning systems. There were no towers blaring out warnings. Where do you stand on this, and what do you make of it all?
Good morning. This is a pattern that we've seen from the left over the years, especially when it comes to gun tragedies. They are the first ones to come out and say that it's Republicans' fault that these people were innocently killed. And now we're seeing it with this flood in Texas. I mean, you have families who have not recovered the bodies of their children yet. And you have Chuck Schumer sending a letter to the Inspector General wondering if the Trump administration cuts to FEMA had anything to do with this tragedy. I think it is sickening, and I think that these people should be ashamed of themselves. There are families that are hurting. Little girls are missing still. Can you imagine just the pain and hurt of that? And to politicize this less than 36 hours or so after this tragedy, it's disgusting. I think it also comes on the heels of President Trump, who's had just 2 fantastic winning weeks in the courts and with his legislative agenda. And I think this is Democrats trying to gain some type of momentum here on these tragedies to try to blunt the winning streak of the president.
Chris Arps joins us, political analyst and talk show host as well in the afternoons in St. Louis. Chris, good optics, bad optics on the heels of, all kinds of replays of Pam Bondi saying, those files are on my desk and I'm looking through them and we're going to expose it. And we had a big, influencer rollout and back in February, March, whenever that came out. And now there's nothing there. There are no client lists. Right? Should Jeffrey Epstein even been in jail? Some people are asking rhetorically. What do you make of this whole thing? Is this people are on the right are asking for Pam Bondi to be fired summarily?
Look, the report from the Justice Department and the FBI is supposed to come out later this week. It was leaked yesterday that this file is essentially closed, that there are tapes, videotapes that they've released supposedly showing that Epstein was in the position to kill himself. Patel and Bongino, they made a lot of noise during their careers talking about this list. So did AG Bondi. I think this just opens up more questions than it closes. And I've seen the reports on X of the tweets of the MAGA base. They are extremely upset. I got to tell you, honestly, I'm not MAGA, but I don't believe that Epstein killed himself. There's just way too many coincidences, way too many incidents of, especially with the correctional officers that were supposed to be watching him. The 3 of them all of a sudden left their shift, and the video cameras stopped working. They were watching him. Come on, give me a break.
All right. Well, okay. So let me ask you this, because I think it's important when you have momentum in a movement, and you won a pretty tough fought election handily, but yet there's polarization. You and I have talked about this before. Isn't it important? And I keep asking us as people on the right who, believe our principles are the best way forward for our generation and those in the future, isn't it important to do a little gut check occasionally? And I bring this up because we have a lot of listeners who remind us maybe of some hypocrisy, maybe not, on the past. So listener Alan texts us, remember when the hurricanes and fires hit under the Biden administration? Republicans said it was his fault for not responding. And even that the Democrats had a weather machine that was trying to take out Trump's club. But now politicizing a tragedy is so wrong. honest question. Did Trump make cuts? So, I mean, have we been guilty? Was Bondi guilty? Was Patel and others? Sometimes swag goes too far, even on your team, no? Or what do you think?
I think so in some cases. I think when it comes to the situations with the hurricanes with Biden, look, Biden administration was taking money out of FEMA and using it for illegal immigrants. I mean, that's something that you can tie directly when there wasn't money available for the people of North Carolina. The reports that I'm hearing from Texas is there were reports from the National Weather Service that issued flood warnings, flash flood warnings. There were some warnings. I think people had never, this was a 100-year flood type of event. That area is used to flooding. I think it just caught, unfortunately, those people by surprise, and that's why we have 90-plus deaths so far. I don't think you can blame this on any way on the Weather Service or FEMA because warnings were given out.
Well, those on the left would push back and say that the FEMA's Disaster Relief Fund is dedicated source of funding, that basically it didn't come out of the same fund. But I think that may be a distinction without a difference for sure. But I think it would probably be, while we have a bunch of blustery communicators with net, we love to watch them fight back against the media and really poke their finger in their eyes. Sometimes you get a little bit of a swag and you overspeak and get a little over your skis. And I just hope that in these instances they don't. There's no doubt, though, that it was not as it was initially portrayed by the media in terms of the reaction down there, right?
Yeah, Dr. Tobler, I honestly think, I don't think Epstein killed himself. I think Patel and Bongino, I think they know the truth, that there are too many very influential high-up people that were involved with this man, and this will be destructive to the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, maybe even to the Republic if these names get released. And I think they were warned in no uncertain terms, do not release this information if you want to have a long life. That's just my opinion, my theory.
Holy cow. That'd be like you'd be akin to being one of Bill Clinton's buddies, right? They don't... They have to, if you're a Bill Clinton buddy, you want to prepay for your funeral and burial, because, get that arranged early. All right.
You remember Vince Foster killed himself in the park in D.C.,
right.
And it was rainy and muddy that day, but his shoes were clean.
Right. All right. With his tinfoil hat squarely on, it's Chris Arps joining us today. All right. So, okay, you've just alluded to the fact that there are people on the right and the left that are not happy with their own party, certainly not happy with the other party. There seems to be a little resurgence of a little thirst for a third party, and Elon Musk has answered that call. What do you say about the emergence of an American party?
Look, when Elon Musk files papers with the FCC saying that America's party has been started, then I'll take him a little more serious. I think and I'll tell you what, I'm not totally convinced that this rift between Trump and Musk is real. I still am not completely convinced on that. But I think Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, had a great suggestion for Musk, is that if he wants to make fundamental changes like he's doing, instead of starting a third party that's just going to help Democrats, why don't you, do some constitutional conventions and things of that matter, try to change constitutions, and maybe that could be more effective than dividing the conservative base.
That's Chris Arps, joins us on Wake Up Missouri this morning.
Chris, we've been hoping for a long time that St. Louis would crack down on crime. So over the weekend, apparently they arrested 19 youths for fireworks-related crimes. They arrested apparently 90 over the holiday weekend. Does St. Louis just hate America, or why did they start with fireworks, I guess?
I don't know. I like the crackdown on this. The 4th of July is supposed to be a festive holiday where we watch the fireworks go off, but you also have to take cover because you're wondering if people are shooting weapons up in the air or just shooting guns randomly. So I'm glad that we've had this crackdown on fireworks. Fireworks are illegal in St. Louis City and St. Louis County. A lot of people don't realize that. And I like the story that I saw this morning in the St. Louis Post-Disgrace that said that some of the parents of these minors are going to be held responsible for their actions. So I think that's a good thing going forward.
Well, thank you for being with us all these weeks, Chris. It's been nice having you on the program. Did I just hear Chris Arps impugn big boy fireworks? Because we had a spectacular fireworks thing on. We did ours on Saturday. Spectacular home fireworks. Are you saying you're against fireworks?
I love fireworks.
Yeah.
It's just that some people, don't use fireworks. They celebrate with gunfire, and that can be a little dangerous.
Yeah, well, I'll have to. I mean, I wasn't sure whether if I invited you to our next fireworks display, whether you would unfriend me or not. I was afraid maybe,
or whether he'd narc on you and report you to the authorities.
That's right.
When you live in a neighborhood where you're like, is that fireworks? Or is that gunfire?
Yeah, right.
That's where I live.
No, I hear you. All right. Well, you'll have to come out to the compound, and we'll do some big boy fireworks next year. How's that sound?
Yes, can't wait. And, did you hear about the rapper yesterday that blew his hand off on the 4th of July?
Oh, no, really?
Yeah, lost 2 fingers, yeah. And his name of his rap name was 4 times. 4 times lost 2 fingers.
Oh,
love it.
Too early.
New York Post headline.
Too early, Chris. Too early. All right. Thank you very much, Chris Harps. We better leave it there. Thank you, brother. We'll talk to you later. All right. Okay, so Chris talked about fireworks and gatherings of Ute, and you don't know if it's a firecracker or a gun going off. Well, the Indianapolis chief of police, I'm wondering if Chief of Police Jill Schluty listened to the chief of police in Indianapolis after a scuffle down there and a young man was dead. I imagine she might be saying these very words too, but she may not have to release it. It may be embarrassing. She may not be able to say that. We'll play that when we get back.
This
You know, we talk a lot about, welcome back into Wake Up Missouri. Along with Stephanie Bell, I'm Randy, there's John, and there's Drake. And Amelia, who was the birthday girl yesterday, turned 11. She's with us today. You know, we talk a lot about law and order, and in the context of some of the reporting with over the weekend, I mean, violence in Chicago. We have ICE and Border and Customs agents being shot at and, you know, injured, and then the guy taken out. A couple of separate incidents right outside their buildings. The left eerily quiet. We hear legislators quiet regularly in Springfield, in Columbia, even in some of our other towns in the other areas that are smaller but still have their share of violence. Moberly, Fulton, I mean, it happens. Jefferson City once in a while. And it seems like, in my opinion at least, I don't know, there's an awful lot of focus put on, what about the police? Where are those police? How come those police weren't around? What's wrong with the leadership? What's police? What's the matter with you people? Well, there was a shooting of a very, very young, sounds like a boy the other day, not even a young man, but I don't know how old, if it ever came out. And I think the Indianapolis chief of police had something that I would like to hear our police leader say. Jill Schlutte's a great police leader. We have in Springfield, we have in Jefferson City, great policing. And maybe it's time that the police say, hang on, wait a minute.
Hundreds of unsupervised kids down here. I don't know how many times I have to say it. We are not your children's keepers. You are. And parents and guardians have got to step up. A kid is dead tonight. And we just don't know the age of the young man down the street, still here, dead. He looks young. It's unacceptable. The police department all night long went from place to place to place, trying to prevent these kind of things. And I gotta be honest, I'm tired of it. You should be tired of it. This is not our job.
Okay. I think it's about time that officials say, wait a minute. Like teachers should say, wait a minute. You drop your kids off, you expect them to turn them into responsible adults with great character development and learning their STEM, and then they come home and you're doom scrolling on your Facebook and you're not looking over their shoulder and you're doing whatever, you're playing your video games and you're doing everything else. I've heard teachers say that. My dad was a teacher. Somewhere along the line it changed. I'm not saying many. I think a lot of the listeners to this program are absolutely looking over their kids and supervising them. And I know, Stephanie, how you look after your kids and make sure that they're on the straight and narrow. And I think, but we report on it regularly. These gatherings of youth in places that youth shouldn't be, and then they get into these fights. And the first thing they do these days is pull a gun. And I'm sorry, is that and he goes on to say later in this that, I mean, there were policemen in this incident in Indianapolis on July 4th where police were like half a block away. You've heard the old song, the police aren't going to be there in the moment when you need to defend yourself against an intruder. Well, in a similar way, the police can't be hovering over your children. Supervise your children when they're likely to go to a place that they have no business getting into and is a seed bed for nothing but weeds growing.
But remember, we played the audio about summertime, and we were not supervised as youths. I mean, I don't know that, I think we're more helicopter parents than we ever have been. So it's not only supervision, but it's also teaching.
Right, and I think that's
right
what he means.
And wrong.
But I mean, if it's like Chris Arps was talking, if you know there's going to be a big, you're in a neighborhood where there's already violence. I mean, would you send your, when Amelia's 16 years old and can drive, if she says, yeah, I'm going to go hang out down in Columbia, 11 o'clock at night, I'll be hanging out down there and just a few of our friends, we're going to go get a couple tacos. You down for that?
I don't know.
Oh, come on, Stephanie Bell.
Kids need a little bit of freedom, but I think teaching them what's right and wrong.
I was glad to see it. All righty. Well, I don't know. Let's see what you guys think. 573-874-9390. Back with more. If you worship in a church, you want an endorsement of your president?
with Stephanie Bell, the Zimmer News Team, and your host, Randy Tobler.
Well, it's 7:08, and we're glad you're with us this morning. I am Randy. There is Stephanie.
Good morning, Randy.
Good morning. It is a good morning because Miss Amelia, birthday girl's in with us. Drake's in with us, eating healthily. John got his ears lowered.
There you go.
John, you hurt me, man. I'm out for a day. I come back, I'm smiling, we connect, and you point at my challenged scalp, my hair challenged scalp, and you say, now we're brothers because you got a haircut.
Kind of rocking the same look. I got the boot camp thing. Yeah. You got the high forehead.
So we're going to visit with Tony Lupo about trying to forecast these type of events. We talked about Springfield. You guys got hammered there.
Yeah, they got
hammered.
5 inches of rain in a short period of time on Sunday, and they actually, like the Sam's Club parking lot, there are pictures of a Jeep submerged.
Yes.
So you park your car, you go into shop, you come back out, your car's underwater. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know exactly the details, but
that's called scan and not go.
That's right in the. I mean, that's it's.
But then while this was cataclysmic, unbelievably, I think obviously unprecedented. They talk about a big flood down in Texas in '87, but I mean this is just the carnage involved in here is just unimaginable. It just makes you weep just to think about it. But we occasionally have fatalities. Sometimes heroic rescues. We lost was it the assistant fire chief here in Columbia, right? Recently
doing a water rescue.
Got caught into a rope that was somehow got tangled up, and he couldn't be brought up, and it was terrible.
2 individuals I think got swept up. Maybe they ended up in a tree, and then they were trying to get them out, and
I guess the motor failed or something. It was just one of those
super dangerous.
But so we want to talk with Tony Lupo at 7:35 about predicting these events, about how seriously to take a watch that turns into a warning of flash floods. We hear it so often. And from the officials who are trying to warn us and keep us safe from these weather events, they have a tough call. It's like they don't want to be crying wolf all the time, but by the other time, if they don't alert us at a low threshold, then in the aftermath, it's, well, you didn't tell us, so it's a tough balancing act.
And I'm guilty of seeing like the flash flooding warnings and being like, oh, like I don't really pay attention to those. And people are kind of talking about how, folks who live near a river, they get a flash flooding warning, and most of the time it's no big deal. It's kind of like Missourians with the tornado warning. We all go stand out on our porch and look for it. It's
kind of like those people who drive through low water crossings 999 times.
Exactly.
Doesn't get you till number 1000.
Yeah. Sorry, Matt corrects me. A Boone County Fire Protection District Chief,
yes. Not
Columbia. My bad. But that was just one of those tragic things. And I remember our good friend Dale Blumenkamp, sitting here and weeping over that and just how sad it was to report on that. At any rate, I just, Outdoor John, yes, Amelia is Stephanie's child, just guessing. She says, I guess we weren't explicit about that, were we? So, look, it does hit close to home. No matter where you are in Missouri, this weather is changeable. And it's not climate change, whatever. It's not about that. It's just the reality of weather.
Well, and I think we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but we've just had such a wet spring, particularly down in the Springfield area. Yeah. We've had some pretty incredible storms, but I mean, we have more rain in the forecast, and rain on top of rain on top of rain. At some point, there's not anywhere for this water to go. So I know my kids were actually, this is interesting. I hadn't thought about, now it's going to make me tear up, but my kids were at Turkey Hill, and they do a float every year, and they put them in with the inner tubes, and they float down. And I asked my son about the float, and he said we couldn't do it because the water was too high. Yeah. And they've done it every other year. So, I mean, it is affecting folks in Missouri. And as we continue to get rain through the summer, I mean, the water is intense.
That's one of those kind of deals, too, where the average person, you said it, Steph, you pay attention to tornado warnings and severe thunderstorm warnings, and we jump on the radio and track those along. But when it comes to flash flood warnings, the vast majority of people just, write them off and say, whatever.
Right. Yeah. And I think there are some guys with big trucks,
Randy,
who maybe in a former time before they grew up, older than they are, when they're very young, may have crossed over that water over the road. Oh, it's fine. I can see the stripe in the road. It's okay. I don't do that anymore. I mean, I maybe did that once or twice, but then when I got into media 25 years ago or so, I'm like, too many reports on this. I did it once
and barely lived to tell about it.
Yeah,
Really?
I mean, I never had a problem with it. I did it a couple times, but I won't do that anymore. I mean, if it's closed, it's closed, and I'll take the long way around if there's a long way around.
Well, and we've got, I mean, I think like a lot of times people have an option, but I'm thinking like, you got people who are out in more rural areas, they have, family members or cattle or whatever else. And so like, a lot of people, it's not just that they're don't want to go around, it's that they've got somewhere they got to try to get. And so,
I think
sometimes people are, it's not just a matter of, I should just go around. Right. It's that I have work I have to get done. And this is the way to get there now. But again, like, especially here in Missouri, please be weather aware this week because we're already pretty saturated and there's more on the way.
Yeah, it's sad that, people hear these warnings and you can get sort of desensitized because they're fairly frequent. But would you rather have it the other way to where you're not warned, and then the 1 in 100 does happen, and then you didn't.
Well, like think about the folks in St. Louis here recently with the tornado. I mean, their tornado stuff didn't go off, and there were a lot of folks who had some pretty close calls.
Yeah. We're going to be talking with Tony Lupo about that, and we're going to be connecting with Lieutenant Colonel Rob Boone, who we talked about in the wake of the bombings and what was going on in the Middle East. We're going to talk with him at some point. Try to arrange an interview with him in the future. Either today or tomorrow, because he worked for FEMA for a few years. So we're going to try to get in touch with him about this. Look, it's always easy to be, look at what we do with sports. Armchair quarterback, Monday morning quarterback. Oh, how come Drinkwitz didn't throw the ball? He ran the ball. What's the matter with it? It's really easy when you're not on the front lines to be criticizing the people in the front lines. When it comes to warning and planning and making decisions, you have to make decisions. They don't always work out well. But I think we're in this environment now where this gotcha. I want to find blame for someone. I want to assume that you had ill intent when you didn't do something or you made an error of commission or an error of what I think is omission. And then we start, pointing fingers. And do you really believe that most people, look, even if they voted for Biden, do you really believe that that's their mission in life is to make your life miserable? I don't want to believe that. Maybe there are some people like that and at the top levels of these party apparati. Amelia, is that the plural of apparatus? Is it apparati or is it apparatuses?
Don't ask me.
Wait a minute. What do you say? You don't know? Apparati. I don't know. All right. Well, look, these kids, as the waters were coming up, and some of them knew they were going to perish, they were singing gospel songs, which leads me to what I wanted to talk about in this segment. We got a little sidetracked, but it was a great conversation. But Stephanie reported on this story that the IRS is now saying they've changed their rule book that as nonprofit organizations, churches, they say churches in the headlines, but I think it's any facility of faith, any faith organization can, within its own walls and to its own people, make a political endorsement of a candidate, which heretofore, I guess if challenged, would have probably maybe excluded you from your tax exemption, right? You would have been threatened with that or at risk of that.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting ruling. The question I had about it was 573-874-9390 or 800-529-5572 if you want to call. Would you want to hear your rabbi, your pastor, your priest, if you're Muslim, your imam, making a political endorsement up on the podium, up on the the pulpit? I don't know if they have pulpits in the mosque. What do they call it?
I don't love that. I don't love when churches get too political.
Yep.
But the IRS said in its court filing, bona fide communications internal to a house of worship between a house of worship and its congregation in connection with religious services do neither one of those things anymore. And when it's talking about those things, it's basically talking about campaigning for a candidate. It says then does a family discussion concerning candidates. So it's likening your congregational discussion to a family discussion of, we're sitting around the dinner table and you're telling, you're sitting around the dinner table, you're telling your daughters, this is who I like.
But that's interesting. So if, let's say someone is the CEO of a rural hospital, and they don't like what Trump and the big, beautiful bill did about Medicaid. I can tell you there's many of people, and I don't know how they vote, but there's many, many administrators and other C-suite people, and real, frankly, a lot of people. I'm concerned about the impact on rural health of some of these issues. Is it illegal? They're a nonprofit. Now, some of them
should become a religious nonprofit.
Some of them are political subdivisions, which may change things. But let's say they're not. Let's say it's a mental health facility. Let's say it's True North, something like that. St. Vincent's, can they? They're nonprofit. They're not houses of worship. They appeal to faith and to the divine and God, and we pray and some of these things. But the events, are they exempt, or is it only a official house of worship?
I believe it's only houses of worship, churches and houses of worship that have tax-exempt nonprofits. What they're also saying in their filing is that that there is a tension here between this prohibition and the First Amendment, obviously your religious freedom. So in the court filing, the IRS said prohibiting churches from endorsing candidates would create serious tension with the First Amendment. You wouldn't have that same tension with a rural hospital, according to their court filing.
Tension? What's the tension? Go over that again.
Because you have religious freedom.
Oh,
right?
okay.
And you have.
Well, but don't you have First Amendment freedom?
Yeah.
Oh. That's different, right? I'm glad we have Stephanie, the counsel here, who can really take care of this and clear this all up for us. Make it as
I don't know that it's
clear as mud.
Well, and
it's not you. It's
and
confusing.
One thing that this is known as I think the Johnson Amendment. One thing the IRS said is we haven't really been enforcing this for a long time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you think of Robert Jeffress, the big First Baptist guy out of Texas, big Trump MAGA guy, right?
Right.
So all right. Well, let us know what you think. Maybe we'll put that on Facebook. Would you want your church leader to be, from during the sermon, during the message, endorsing a candidate? We'll put that up on Facebook and we'll have a little poll, okay? And when we come back, we'll make Missouri healthy again. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Wake Up Missouri.
changing habits healthily and reforming the way we eat and how we live in terms of changing from a less healthy to a healthier lifestyle. I saw this on Dr. Mark Hyman's website. I thought it was telling, and it's the kind of things we talk about with our patients, and maybe you guys have had this. Do you ever say, I heard Randy or Helene or someone say, you got to eat 6 or 7 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. That's what you got to do. And I only eat 1 a day, and so I can't eat 6 a day, so I'm just not even going to start. That sort of all or nothing thinking can sometimes get you into trouble. Or I really am drinking too much. I'm stressed out a lot. I've been drinking too much. I can't lose weight. So I'm going to stop drinking. All or nothing, right?
I've heard this described in a really interesting paradox in that you can either be an abstainer or a moderator, and certain personalities, like I'm not a good moderator. I can't eat 1 square of the Hershey bar. I do better if I have none, right? And so I think it's personality driven.
It may be, but I think a lot of people find that they get frustrated or like, I'm supposed to do a 30-minute workout 5 times a week because that's, after all, what everyone says is healthy, 150. And I only have 22 minutes today because I've got a meeting, and now it's at 2:30 and it's already 2:08. What am I going to do? Well, work out for 22 minutes and say that's better than if I didn't work out at all. So it's sort of, and the other thing is when you're looking at a task that appears too big or it's a major change, try to think about shrinking the task. So before you embark on some change in your life, say, what's the likelihood on a scale of 1 to 10 that I'm going to be able to really achieve this and cement it, hardwire it? And if your answer is, that's a 9 or 10, well, then just shrink the task and say, here's a thought. Instead of buying a big bag of potato chips and thinking you're going to maybe limit yourself to just a small little handful, right? Why not get one of the mini servings, right? They have what's it called? Shrinkflation. They're smaller. Do that instead. Okay, potato chips, eventually probably you want to make that a really rare treat because that's not really anything that's too very good for you. Okay, but they're addictive and we like them on occasion, and for July 4th with your burgers and brats, okay. But
I do this. I buy like the travel packs of nuts, for example.
Yeah.
Like I buy all sorts of like the little small packages of things, and it really helps me for portion control.
So I think that these are some things. And then when you're really on a pretty good roll and you fall off a little bit, and you break the habit, should I admit what I did yesterday? I think I'm going to. So I've been having a hard time connecting with my newest little grandkid, Sable. Every time I try to look at her and go, hey, sweet little Sable, smile, she starts crying. Then she spits, and it's just a disaster. And so I'm on my way home from my mission yesterday. I was on assignment, and I just called Sammy. I said, Sammy, is she up? I thought I'd just spend a little time with her. So I dropped by, and guess what? We had the best time. I read little books where you pet the little zebra. That's a little furry thing, and and she chuckled and giggled. And so I did something that I really, in retrospect, probably shouldn't do, but I did probably a little bit of what we're talking about here. I haven't had a White Castle in like a year, and I love White Castles now and then. So I stopped by and I bought 4 sliders because it was just a joyful moment. I connected with the grandkid, finally got a smile. I thought, I'm going to celebrate. It's a joyful moment.
Love it.
And guess what? I only ate 2 of them, and I put 2 away for a rainy day. And I thought, well, Randy, okay, I wish I wouldn't have eaten any at all, but all in context, it wasn't a bad thing. So I think, did I practice what I'm preaching here? Close? Not bad?
Kind of.
I only ate 2 of them.
Come on. I actually put 2 of those addictive sliders in the refrigerator uneaten. Come on. Give me some credit here. But one of the lesson here is when you look back and you say, why did I do that? Okay, I did that because I celebrate. Maybe I should have celebrated with something different, like, a couple laps in the pool. I'll do that next time.
Okay, fair.
All right. When we come back, Anthony Lupo, our friend Tony Lupo on National Weather Service and flood prediction. Stay tuned.
I think just local news
Welcome back into Wake Up Missouri. I'm Randy. There's Stephanie along with John and Drake. Welcome in, and we're glad the whole family's with us, all you guys out there. If you want to comment on the topics and the things and the controversies we talk about, please join us on text 573-874-9390 or by phone 800-529-5572.
Or you can watch us on YouTube or Facebook and comment there. We'll chime in.
You can. And
we've got some good questions up on our Facebook page. If you were starting a new party, what would you name it? I put that question up there. Kanye had the birthday party. Elon's got the America party.
Well, one of our family members here on the program is Tony Lupo, professor of atmospheric sciences at MU. Sounds like there's a storm going on in the background.
His party would be the weather party.
Would that be the thunderstorm party going on there? How you doing, Tony? Welcome into the program.
Uh-oh.
Tony, are you there?
Oh, Randy, hi.
There you are. Sounded like there's a little storming going on in your neighborhood there, or was that just the phone in your pocket?
No, I think it just might be the car.
Oh. Okay. You're on the road, right? You're on the road returning from a little July 4th vacation?
Yes, we are.
That's good. I understand you were up in the Northeast. Sorry to hear that. Did you get infected with any, liberal toxicology up there? Are you okay?
It's the old adage, it's a nice place to visit, but you wouldn't want to live there.
Okay. Hey, so there's a lot of back and forth. A lot of the media was asking a lot of questions, hey, what about these NOAA and National Weather Service cuts that Trump did as a part of the wide swath of cutting during the Doge days early in the administration? And, didn't that have something to do with these poor people that are now deceased and their family members are grieving and the kids? And it's just unbelievably sad on this otherwise celebratory holiday. And then the White House pushing back and saying, no, there was adequate staffing at the National Weather Service. Let's talk a little bit about predicting these kind of events, especially in areas where there's a precedent for these kind of events.
Well, yeah. First of all, the meteorology of what happened is on June 29th, we had a weak tropical storm in the Gulf of Mexico, or Gulf of America. People weren't very much aware of it because it was a weak one. But these weak early season tropical storms tend to cause a lot of trouble. And they tend to cause a lot of trouble because the jet stream is so far north that it doesn't capture these events. And the rains can linger for a long time. And that's what we saw here in Texas. When that storm went ashore, there was enough forcing to create thunderstorms, and the moisture from the leftover storm just provided for a bad mix.
Is the professional and academic network of meteorologists and atmospheric people and weather folks, were you aware of this at the time? And is this something that everyone sort of gets the vibe on, or is this something you discovered afterwards?
No, this is something that, you're aware of the storm being there, you're aware of the conditions, but you can never predict exactly where you're going to get the heavy rains. For example, in this one, I believe there was a prediction for heavy rains, and the maximum was a few miles off, maybe 30 miles off, and the amounts were not as much as what actually happened. Well, that's not a bad forecast. That's actually a good forecast. It's just that it wasn't exact. And that's something we can't expect. You can't expect precision.
Yeah. Well, they had a watch, I think, a day ahead, if not earlier, and then they had a warning several hours before, but it just didn't get to the people locally because they didn't have siren towers, and I guess there weren't radios in the camp, from what's being reported.
Absolutely. The warnings were there, the watches were there. The Weather Service office was, they have the staff that they needed. And when there's an event like this, a lot of times the people there will come and help supplement the staff there. But that's also correct, Randy. In my experience, when we've been out in the woods or camping or like that, nobody's thinking about having a weather radio.
Yeah. We're talking with Tony Lupo, of course, professor of atmospheric sciences, author of a great climate change book. And he joins us here on Wake Up Missouri with Randy and Stephanie, John and Drake.
Tony, talk to us a little bit about staffing challenges at the National Weather Service, and not so much the immediate ones since Doge came on the scene, but we know Pleasant Hill and St. Louis and all for about the past 10, 15 years have had to deal with some shortages, haven't they?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's been a chronic problem for almost as long as I've been a meteorologist, that these offices are chronically 1, 2, 3 people short of where they'd like to be and where they should be. And that's always been a problem.
Why?
I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if it's because of new developments that have made models more useful. I don't know if it's just not a priority. I don't have many answers as to why this has been a problem for so long.
Tony, let's translate this to listeners, whether they're in what's been really ravaged with tons of storm problems this rainy season in Springfield, Southwest Missouri area, as well as, of course, in mid-Missouri from time to time. We have a listener who texted us and makes an interesting point. He said people would pay more attention to the weather warnings if the forecasters didn't over-dramatize everyday weather. This is not about you, Tony, but I think we see that, it's a 24-hour news cycle, there's airtime to fill, and people get a little desensitized, don't they? How do we handle this?
Yeah, that's been the subject of study since the Joplin tornado, because I agree. I as a meteorologist, I actually agree that we are having a problem where we're over-warning. But when you live in a society with so much litigation, they must feel that it's better to overwarn than to underwarn. And where is that middle ground, between warning too much and not enough? So there are ongoing studies that are looking at these issues.
So where should, other than listening to KWTO, KWOS, and 93.9 The Eagle, for our best, from several sources kind of information. And I don't know, what about your weather page? Is that back up, or are you going to have a credible source? Because I've always depended on you heavily.
You talk about that, and yesterday I woke up and suddenly the Mid-Missouri weather page was back.
Woo! All right. Hey, yay. All right. Beautiful. Great to hear.
So,
I didn't know that. It's good.
Yeah, I'm not social media savvy, so I guess what happened is I spent time in Facebook jail, but it's back, and I created the new one to replace it, so I guess I'll post on both for now.
Yeah. Hey, well, that's good. And so I guess what you're saying is, look, there's practical things, right? If you're in an area that floods frequently, you probably should maybe take things more seriously, right? And then how do you calibrate this? If you're admitting that the weather reports are a little over the top, how do you avoid getting oversensitized, Tony?
Well, it's like you said, you just have to be aware. You have to make sure that you're looking at the skies. You have to make sure that you have a credible source that you can rely on. And just pay attention. A lot of us, when we're out in the woods, we probably don't pay attention as much as we should. But you got to pay attention out there.
Yeah. And we were joking about how some of us, maybe in former days, until news reporting was so explicit and frequent about people being washed away trying to drive across little, there's only 3 inches there. I can see the white stripe. No, that's not safe, right? When that's on the road.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And you have to be aware that high water is trouble. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that anywhere. I'm not going to say anything about these folks that were washed away. They, this happened in the middle of the night. They had almost no chance of getting the information in a timely manner.
Yeah.
But you just have to be aware of where you are, especially camping near rivers.
Oh, yeah.
And things like that.
NOAA radio, National Weather Service, or some kind of a weather radio important, huh?
Yeah, you can get portable ones at any grocery store around here, and they are programmable.
Okay, and some of them are solar powered too, so they work in the most remote areas as well. All right, hey Tony, we really appreciate you taking time out from your trek back. Safe travels. Look forward to talking with you soon, and congrats on the Mid-Missouri weather page being back up on Facebook.
Well, thank you. That was a pleasant surprise yesterday.
Good for you. All right. Well, God is good. Things happen like that for a reason. We thank you, Tony Lupo. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
All right, John, what's happening in your world, brother?
Heads up, world travelers like the Bell family, this doesn't suck.
Okay. I don't think he's talking about a Dyson. We'll be back at 7:52.
This is Wake Up Missouri.
Rolling back one of its most hated airport security rules as of July 7th, an internal memo reported on by numerous travel industry sources. Passengers no longer will be required to remove their shoes at agency checkpoints. People have been cleared for TSA pre-check also have been able to enjoy not walking on the filthy airport floors ever since the shoe bomber Richard Reed smuggled explosives on board back in 2001. You have to have the real ID, but everybody needs that now. And travelers are now commenting on the potential new rule. One fashion-forward flyer said, "I'm so happy this just changed my airport fit game." Other frequent flyers wonder what may be next. And they bring up the woman who was pulled aside for having the rotisserie chicken in her bag on the airplane. They pulled some TSA staffers who say they're looking forward to the shoes on policy. They say the sneaker check can get a little fragrant.
Oh.
One guy cited international passengers, and another TSA worker compared the smell to a hog lot mixed with an NFL locker room.
Oh, man.
And now you know the rest of that keep your shoes on story.
So, I guess there are other advantages to pre-check other than not taking off your shoes and your belt and, everything else, right?
Maybe
so there's
a
still
shorter
pre-check.
line.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just always wonder, the person in the front of the line who has, 7 watches, a bunch of chains, a pocket full of change, and shoes that, require you to sit down to take off. I'm like, have we been on an airplane before? Come on.
So you don't like when I have my lace-ups on there?
I just think you should plan accordingly. I mean, I've got it down to a science.
I'll bet you do.
And if I ever walk through the thing and something on my outfit goes off, I will never wear that again in an airport because I think it's embarrassing.
So do you have pre-check, don't you? Or you probably have the eye thing, the biometric. What's
clear.
that called?
Clear.
Yeah,
I have that too.
So what do? You just look into the thing and it reads your
reads
mind?
my mind, yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tells you. It's like a Ouija board. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a seer.
Sometimes the clear line's shorter, sometimes it's not. But typically it's a bit shorter. And you should have global entry if you travel internationally, which is, it helps you through customs a bit faster.
Yeah, that customs line can be tough.
I don't have a real ID, though. I need to go get one.
What? Stephanie Bell. No, that's news. That's news. Put that, John, can you put that on the next newscast?
I've been having to fly with my passport.
Yeah, when the passport works.
It does. So does your global entry card, apparently. But yeah, I need to go get that. But I do think the shoe thing is it's gross. And I always feel bad for people. It happened to me once and never again, in that I wore shoes with no socks, and then I always remember to stash a pair of socks in my carry-on. But putting your bare feet on the airport floor is yucky.
I always have this moment after you put all your stuff in the bin, and then it's like this panic, did I get everything? But now I've just started throwing everything in my little carry-on suitcase.
But I feel so accomplished because I love a gold star, I love an A. And so when all the stuff goes in the bin and you walk through free and clear, it feels like an accomplishment. You're like, yes, I did it right.
Or you get behind the guy who's got 3 cell phones, 2 iPads, and a mini laptop, right?
Yeah, and with TSA Pre, you don't have to pull any of that stuff out, which is really nice. But I did fail a couple. I think I had the kids, so I was a bit frazzled, and I thought I'm gonna hydrate before I get on this airplane, and I put a full can of LaCroix in my trench coat.
Oh.
And I was like, I'm gonna drink it while we're waiting around and getting checked in and whatever. Totally forgot. And put the trench coat in the bin, and the guy just looks at me and kind of picks it up, and he just shakes his head, and I was like, I'm so sorry.
So how did they decide whether you go through the porno scan or the low-tech scan, the metal detector?
If you're TSA Pre in Colombia, you go through the easier scan, just the U-shaped. Yeah. You don't go through the arms up, big body, whatever scan.
There was a time when those came out that there was a lot of objection. There was some, because that gives you a pretty good contour of your body.
Right. Yeah.
Do they screen the people that are screening you on the porno scan?
I don't know. I do know.
It's a good question.
It's like hands up, don't look.
It's super embarrassing because it puts a red box right over wherever they think you are smuggling something. And I've had it before where the red box was like right over where it looks like I had something in a place where and I was like red faced. I was like, I'm not smuggling anything. I don't, and then they have to wand whatever area turned red.
Where the sun don't shine?
It's horribly embarrassing.
Yeah, I know. I don't like that porno scan.
And then I don't understand when I've done it before where I've gotten the random on the clear on the TSA and then the random through this thing. And I was like, I should buy a lottery ticket. But I don't know when they have to like wipe your hands. Have you had that?
Yeah, once.
I don't know what triggers that.
Yeah, I had some talcum powder or something, and that got on my hands, and I guess that set off the machine. I don't know.
I don't understand.
Hey, we're going to talk with Brian Hauswirth when we come back because big happenings, at least on the horizon for Boone Health as the hospital and system goes on. Stay tuned.
economic growth and deficit reduction. It is a home run. There's like no downside to this bill.
Well, that's Budget Director Russ Vogt as we open the third hour of the Tuesday edition of Wake Up Missouri. That's him talking about the big, beautiful bill act. We have to say act. Schumer insisted on that. Being petty, as Schumer will be. Stephanie's not petty. Randy tries not to be.
Maybe just a little.
John either. And Drake always. But Brad Jones, never. And we're thrilled to have Brad Jones, Missouri Director of the National Federation of Independent Business, with us to talk about the BBB and what it means for small business people. How you doing, Brad? Welcome in.
I'm good. I'm not petty either. Yeah. I'm good.
Nah, we like to kid one another here. We know you're not. I made that perfectly clear. You're never petty. But you do talk about some granular details about surveys and hiring and workforce and investment and all that. So we want to get into that. But what's your initial reaction to the big, beautiful bill and what it means for small business people, their employees and their customers?
Just a couple of observations. I think it's interesting the way this has been covered. It's kind of like, all this other stuff about Medicaid and it's a big bill. There's a lot in it. But, it's kind of interesting to me that I think one of the most important parts of this entire bill really deals with small business. And I think it's probably one of the most significant small business bills that we've passed in probably the last 50 years. Wow. Because, they kind of gloss over it and they say, well, yeah, we restored the 2017 tax cuts. And, but they never tell you exactly, so what is that? What does that mean? Well, let me tell you what that means for small business. That means that at the end of 2025, about 33 million small businesses will not see a 20% tax increase in their taxes. And we're going to talk a little bit about the optimism index here in a minute, but, that's huge. If you look at the optimism index, I think you can almost point at a lot of small businesses out there going, I'm not going to do this or I'm not going to do that because I'm not sure if my taxes are going to go up 20% at the end of 2025 if this bill doesn't pass. And so, needless to say, NFIB has worked so hard for the last 2 years to make sure that was part of the bill. And we're really excited about the fact that we could do that for our members and for every small business because you've got, like I said, it's everybody that's not incorporated. It's not C Corps. It's all of your LLCs and your partnerships, and it's sub-S's. And so you're really talking about the majority of small businesses in this country that are not going to fall off the cliff at the end of 2025. Now, there's a couple other things in there, too, that, of course, the press never talks about. The 179 expensing. So let's say you want to buy a pizza oven or you want to buy some big piece of equipment for your business. Mm-hmm. That was capped at $1.25 million, and they raised that to $2.5 million. And what is important about that is you can expense it this year.
Yeah.
You don't have to dribble it out over the next 5 to 10 years. You can expense it this year and have it done. And they did raise the expensing on that. The other thing that they raised was a $15 million threshold for individual filers when it comes to the death tax, and $30 million for joint filers. So if you've got the family farm or you've got a small business out there and the matriarch or the patriarch passes away, they've raised the threshold on what you have to pay on that. Frankly, I'd love to get rid of the death tax. I think it's awful. You shouldn't get a bill when you die. But anyway, that's for another day. But anyway, there's those three things, Randy, that are going to be monumental for small business. And the other thing I was going to add too is that 20% deduction is permanent. Now, back in 2017, they made the corporate cut permanent, but they did not the one for the rest of the small businesses. So they put sunset of 2025 on there. So this means that that 20% is going to be permanent, and it's going to be real interesting to see. I think it's going to have a really great effect on the economy.
I think a lot of people, Brad, were really holding their potential investment bucks in their business very, very close to the vest, waiting to see how this was going to unfold, right? Because if that didn't go through, that's an existential threat to businesses that run on small margins.
Well, and I mean, that's all bared out in the Small Business Optimism Index that we do every month. I mean, you could just see in the last 6 months, first of all, the optimism was dipping after November, but you also saw that everybody was really pulling in their reins and saying, you know what, I'm not making any big capital expenditures. There's new vehicles and there's new things that I need for the business, but I'm not going to do it right now because I don't know what's going to happen at the end of 2025 with our taxes. And as I've talked about on this show many, many times, uncertainty is the worst thing out there for small businesses. Even if they know it's going to be bad, they'd rather know than not know. And when it comes to Congress, it's pretty hard to have a crystal ball and figure out exactly what they're going to do. But by golly, they knuckled down and did it. And I came to you live and in concert last month from D.C., and I felt really good about it, about where it was going to go. Now, the thing that I'm somewhat impressed about is the fact they actually did it by July the 4th. We had, when we had our visits with our congressional delegation out there, they said, yeah, we really feel good about it. We think it's going to pass. And I said, by July 4th? And then they kind of looked at you like, well, yeah, that'd be great, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be cool?
I think there was a lot of skepticism.
Yeah. Okay. Well, whatever. But yeah, they actually got it done, and I think, Chairman Smith, I think, had an awful lot to do with that. He has really become a real force in Congress, and it's just because of the way he is. He is. Jason is just Jason from Southeast Missouri, and he gets people in the room and tries to get things worked out. And I think he's been sort of a breath of fresh air in Congress.
What's the latest business survey saying? Was that out this morning, or is that a coming attraction? Yeah. What's it looking like?
We had a big jump up in optimism as far as the whole index is concerned last month. And for May, and this one is for June, and so the May optimism index jumped up big time. This one pretty much just kind of maintained.
Okay, treading water,
and it didn't go up. It didn't go way down. It didn't go up. It just ticked down maybe just a couple things. There was something about inventories this time that they felt that inventories were too low, and there's 10 things that make up the optimism index. A couple things, though, that are still, I think, positive. Do you plan to make the capital outlays? Was one exactly we were talking about, Randy, and that was down a little bit. Yeah. And again, that's kind of the hunker down mentality of I'm not doing anything with the business till I figure out what's going to happen with my taxes.
Yeah, just idle mode. Yeah.
Yeah, and the expected economy to improve was down a little bit too. So. Do you expect your retail sales to be higher? It was down just a little bit. But then you had earnings trends that were up. Is now a good time to expand? It was up. In employment, the labor market is still a problem for small business. We had 38% of our members that said, we still have jobs that we cannot fill. And when that happens,
sure.
That provides more pressure on compensation, and when you've got more pressure on compensation, guess what? You don't get down to your 2% inflation rate that I know that the feds and everybody wants.
Brad Jones joins us this morning on Wake Up Missouri with just a couple minutes left and unpacking an awful lot of great news for us this morning.
Brad, a devil's advocate kind of question for you. The potential cuts to Medicaid for presumably, I don't know, part-time workers and all. Could that have a negative effect on that already challenged job market out there?
Well, it could. And, I think we're going to have to wait and see exactly what's going to transpire as far as the Medicaid cuts are concerned. I don't think anybody really honestly knows at this point what the effect is going to be on that and how that's going to affect employment. Right now, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen with employment anyway, because if we can get some of the inflation rate down, there is some talk that they're going to cut interest rates possibly again sometime this year. So it's there's a lot of factors involved, and it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen as far as the Medicaid cuts are concerned. I don't know, John. It's short answer. I'm not sure exactly what effect that's going to have.
The law is one thing that they passed, and of course the regulations and the rules that come down are another thing. Brad, as this continues to unfold and its impact on both businessmen and women and their employees and their customers, I'm sure that you will be on top of it like white on rice, and we look forward to talking with you again next month.
Well, and we'll be interested to see what the optimism index does next month.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
This one in June does not reflect the fact that the president signed that bill a couple of days ago.
We'll see how it works out.
It'll be interesting to see. Yeah. Sure.
Hey, thanks for joining us as always. Appreciate it. Brad Jones, Missouri Director of the NFIB. Thanks, brother. Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
And we stepped aside. We were going to talk about Boone Health at this segment, but Brad joins us every month at this time, and so we wanted to give him that time to really expand on the BBB. And we're going to continue to unpack that, what happened. I'm sure Stephanie will continue to be reporting on the fallout of that, starting with this Morning Bell, which comes up next. And we will talk about Boone Health and their look for a strategic partner at 8:35. Promise. That'll happen. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Wake Up Missouri.
Stephanie, how are the markets looking?
Ooh, we took a nosedive yesterday. The Dow was down 0.94%, NASDAQ down 0.92%, S&P down 0.79%. Driving the losses was consumer discretionary, materials, energy, financials, all down pretty big yesterday.
Yeah.
And that was on the heels of this renewed tariff discussion from Trump. He announced, the tariffs are going to resume on some countries, and then sent letters to other countries saying, hey, you better get to the negotiating table or we're going to ramp those up again on you. So we saw some pretty big losses in, for example, Toyota and Honda were amongst the stocks that fell after one of the letters that was publicized from Trump was addressed to Japan.
And this was at the levels that got the markets all roiled up back in, February, right?
Right.
Or April, I guess, when he announced them. Yeah, April Fool's Day. Yeah.
Right. So we just heard from our friend Brad Jones at NFIB that, folks were feeling a bit better. But of course, over the last, month and a half, the tariff discussion has really been, has settled down a bit, but it looks like it's back. And we might see more chaos in the markets because largely, Randy, for the first part of this year, markets were almost completely driven by tariff talk and
as
virtually nothing else.
Whoop, I had some Besant sound there, but we'll play that later. You're right. That things had sort of settled down with the extension, and now that talk is in the air. Do you think that's what drove the markets yesterday? Yeah.
Yeah, and then we're going to also, we didn't get to this in the daily DC rundown, but now the Senate is back in session, and they're going to be talking about rescission, which is where they actually talk about cutting some government spending. So, I think that conversation might also drive some of the markets as we move forward, whether or not we're actually going to get less government or not. We certainly didn't get it in the big, beautiful bill. Now, I saw this headline in the Wall Street Journal, and I thought, we are so back. The headline is, think work-life balance is overrated, you're hired. And so companies and employers are being much more upfront with workers. We've been on this kind of hiatus, I would call it, since the pandemic of we just, as employers, we had to give people whatever they wanted, more vacation days, remote work possibilities, flexible schedules. Everyone wanted, and because the labor market it has been so squishy, it's whatever you want, as long as you're competent, I'll give you the whole thing.
A lot of leverage for employees. Yeah.
Tons. And now the tables may be turning. So we've got employers saying, if you're looking for work-life balance, this is Solace, a healthcare marketplace. If you're looking for work-life balance, this isn't it in their posting. A job posting for a senior engineer at software company Rilla tells applicants, please don't join unless you're eager to work 70 hours a week in person.
What is this, Japan?
Google co-founder in February told employees that 60 hours a week was the sweet spot of productivity.
Yeah.
And the federal government told their staff this year of a new performance culture, quote unquote, insisting on excellence at every level. So I like this. I think we've got to get back to what makes America great again. And I think that's capitalism. I think that's working hard. I think that's high expectations. I think, this whole, we can talk about the 4-day school week, but this whole you only have to show up 30 hours a week and, all of this stuff, and you can work remotely. I don't think that's healthy for us, and I think we're losing productivity as a result. And I think there's an opportunity for self-selection. If you want to go work for, forward thinkers and people who work all the time like Elon Musk, then you have that opportunity to get ahead, fine. And I think we should celebrate that. If you don't, then maybe there's a different job for you. But I don't think it's wrong of employers to be upfront with, hey, for this job, we need, an A player, and we need full attention, and we need your time. And if that doesn't work for you, then maybe this isn't the place for you.
I think that's healthy. Isn't that what built this country, was basically a really super strong work ethic and the joy in a job well done? Somehow it's been sort of denigrated if you're a, quote, workaholic. Oh, my God, you're a workaholic. Well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with work? It's joyful.
And if you want to make money, let's find a way to help you do it.
Well, Brian Hauswirth's been working on the Boone Hospital strategic partner search and some problems with the I-70 construction and crashes. Coming up.
They can come with looking at a partnership, whether it's with a larger health system or other independent health systems.
Well, that was the CEO of Boone Health, Brady Dubois, talking with Brian Hauswirth, who joins us now on Wake Up Missouri as we talk about healthcare and convulsions in the healthcare space, not only countrywide, but of course in mid-Missouri. And, Brian, we've heard about the Mizzou and Anthem, MU Health and Anthem dust up. Now Boone Health making a play to potentially partner. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's a big story. It really is. And it broke this morning, and I've got it up on our news site in Columbia. It's at 939theeagle.com. And I also have a statement from the Boone Health Board of Trustees. But Randy, in a nutshell, you're exactly right. They're beginning the process of searching for a strategic partner. And they may remain independent. Their growth is huge right now. They continue to expand. They continue to grow. Their emergency room is growing. So they're looking at a partnership that could involve a larger health system or other independent health systems. There were several other reporters in the room when we spoke to Brady Dubois. The TV stations were there, the newspapers, myself, and he would not give specifics on names, but he did confirm they're talking basically to every player in Missouri in healthcare. And he didn't give names, but I'll just go ahead and give some because obviously he said they're talking to the players. So I'm sure they're talking to Mercy. I'm sure they're talking to places like St. Luke's. I'm sure they're talking to BJC. Cox in Springfield. Mercy has a big tie in Springfield as well. There may be others. And one other thing, Randy, that I thought he brought up in the briefing with the press that I thought was significant, you know this as a doctor, he talked about the Liberty Hospital in Liberty, Missouri, and Stephanie knows this because it got attention at the Capitol. Liberty was an independent hospital, but they affiliated, and some people and some Mizzou fans didn't like it, they affiliated with the KU Medical Center. And they have, and by the way, they've done very well after doing that. They have. But the bottom line is this. They serve 26 counties. Their emergency room right now, the numbers before they went independent, 2,200 emergency room visits a month. They're at 3,300 right now. He says they need to expand. They need $25 million to expand. They want to do that. He said they need more hospital beds. He said on the record it costs $1 million to add a bed of that hospital. They have 392 beds, but add a bed in a room and stuff. They want to be able to do that. They have some space up on the 7th floor. But
did he comment on, just a year or so ago when he took over, a couple years ago, talking about the really terrible financials and the balance sheet for Boone Health? I mean, certainly they haven't totally turned that around at this point yet, but they're talking about making more investment. Seems like an interesting but potentially, long-term rewarding investment.
Yeah, and they were, let's be honest, they were struggling. You are correct. And Brady Dubois is getting a lot of credit for turning that around.
I worked with him when he was leading a hospital up in Northwest Missouri, and me in Northeast Missouri. He did a great job.
Mosaic, he had great success there. I mean, he pretty much has the keys to that place. He's very well liked, and he's very well respected. They have turned it around, and he kept emphasizing the staff and everything else. Randy, they also have a lot of ties to Mexico and Fayette and Booneville and some of these other clinics. They've talked about that, but they serve 26 counties all the way past your farm in Adair County. They serve Montgomery County to the east, Saline to the west, Miller to the south. But it is a big deal. And the last thing I'd say about it, I think it is important because you asked a very good question when we were getting ready to go on the air this morning. What happens if this doesn't happen? And he said on the record that basically, they got to find the right culture fit. They want to find somebody that fits with their culture, that respects the employees, and that if they don't find that fit, they're going to remain independent. They'd be just fine, too. But they want to at least explore this.
So there's no doubt that there's advantages when you come to purchasing, right? I mean, everyone has a relationship with a group purchasing organization in the healthcare space. But I guarantee you, BJC Healthcare can buy things cheaper probably, at least on many items, than Boone Health as an independent, right?
Yes.
So you start thinking
Mercy
about
too.
Mercy too and so forth. Okay. Are people, I can almost read people's minds out there going, wait a minute, didn't Boone get in bed with BJC and that didn't work out real well? That was a management agreement, right?
That was.
So I'm wondering how did you ask that question? What about that what I think most people would agree was probably not a successful, partnership, right? Because they abandoned it, by the way.
I did.
What did you say?
There were a couple of questions that I was able to ask, and I was not able to ask that specific question, but I did ask about the balance sheet, and I'll have more on that tomorrow morning. And I also asked him about what he means by culture, but he did not. And somebody even asked him, could you potentially sell the thing? And he basically all but dismissed that. There's a lot of issues that go into that. We'd need a half an hour to talk about it, but I'll say this. It was not a great marriage between Boone Health and BJC. There were a lot of issues there. And what was really happening, Randy, what was happening is the hospital was being controlled by people in St. Louis. It was. Right. That is what was going on.
Well, but that's the thing. You subordinate whenever you are a smaller fish and you are swallowed or you partner with a larger fish.
Right.
It's like we take our shoes off at the airport, right? You sacrifice a little bit of liberty for security, right? And that's the question people are going to ask.
It is, and it's
because some of the friendly, neighborly neighborhood quality. When I was up in Northwest, when I landed there in 2006,
right.
And this is no offense to MU.
Yes.
But in most cases, when people needed care that we couldn't render, I said, where do you want to go? Boone. When BJC took over, gradually it changed. I'm just being honest with you. But yet when I deal with the people at Boone, they're like, wow, they're just so accommodating, so neighborly, so friendly. And I think people that have a memory of the Boone and that community hospital feel don't want that to go away, right?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I've heard we had the baby show a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Zimmer was involved and highly respected. He did bring up the Mexico hospital. I know that's been an issue you've talked about.
Yeah, that came up the other day.
He said by being able to partner with someone larger, and again, or another independent health system or a larger health system, I'm paraphrasing here because I'll use the soundbite tomorrow or Thursday. He actually said a ton of stuff. There were like 10 stories I could have come out of. But he said this is on. They're going to continue to do that. They're going to pursue a new Mexico hospital, and it's going to happen. But he said it's going to be easier to do that with a larger system. But they're still planning to do it right now.
Okay, can we pivot here really quickly?
Sure.
Because we've been getting some questions about folks. You've got a story up about a lot of accidents happening in the I-70 work zones here recently.
Yes.
Has MoDOT responded?
MoDOT, I've talked to MoDOT. I've talked to the Highway Patrol. The patrol is trying to do enforcement, Stephanie. The story you're talking about, I've got it up again. It really affects the whole state, but it is at 93.9 The Eagle Facebook. And I have more than 100 comments responded to it because I asked people what can be done to make it safer. The patrol is all but begging our listeners and all of you out there to slow down in that work zone. And if you look at all 100 comments, almost all of them said the same thing. People are speeding in work zones. Now, others are blaming the concrete barriers, but caller after caller, person after person is saying they are speeding. The patrol knows it. They're trying to get in there. Here's the problem, Stephanie, is that basically, and you can see this on the Wellsville, you can see this truck that overturned at 93.9theeagle.com. It basically tied the whole lane up for an hour, and that was on July 3rd as people are going to their 4th of July destinations. You can't really get a trooper in there, and they're working onto the right. It's very hard to do the enforcement. So they're urging people to slow down. Now, they are off apparently in the distance, but people want more visible enforcement. That's the biggest takeaway. People are, and there are accidents in there almost every day. Now, others are saying that those concrete barriers need to be taken down. I have heard that because apparently when it rains, people are saying that there's nowhere for the water to go. MoDOT wants to do the barriers because of the, you could have, it's just
protect workers and equipment.
That's just
so. I've struggled though with when it slows down from 70 to what 55.
55.
Okay. What if everyone around you and in front of you and in back of you is wanting to go 65 and they're tailgating you? What do? You're getting the finger, you're getting road rage. I don't know what to do. I mean, I'm sorry, Mr. Highway Patrolman. You end up find yourself sort of hoping and praying that you're not going to get caught, but it can be dangerous in some cases to go slower than the traffic around you. It can be,
and it is. And
I don't know what to do.
The advice I would say is, you definitely, if you're being tailgated and people are being aggressive like that, you want to let the Highway Patrol know there's ways you can call because they shouldn't be doing that in a work zone.
Why do people do that? Why do they run? You can't go anywhere. And sometimes it happens on when there's 2 lanes and it's wide open, right?
Right.
And you're maybe passing someone at a normal passing speed,
Right.
and you got a couple of semis in the right-hand lane,
right?
And it's going to take you 15, 20 seconds to pass. And I mean, they're right on your tail. It's like, what do you want me to do, dude? I'm passing. I'm going to get over into the lane when I can.
Yes, exactly.
I don't get that.
There is road rage continues to be an issue. We've seen road rage incidents all over.
Can MHP use drones? Can they use cameras? What do they do?
They do use helicopters also. I've actually ridden with the Highway Patrol using the helicopters when they're up.
Oh, wow.
Actually, they've used airplanes. They don't do that as much, but they there's different things they can do. The problem is with that work zone that it's a long way with the barriers. But they're aware of it. MoDOT's being a little tight-lipped on this, to answer Stephanie's question, but it's clear they're going to keep the barriers up. But it's just, I know the patrol listens to the show every morning. I know Kyle Green has heard it. They're aware of the comments. But I'm telling you, people are demanding, and they are saying, we want more enforcement, and we want these people that are speeding and being aggressive, we want them pulled over and ticketed.
Let's try, Americans tend to bristle when they're told what to do. Let's just be honest.
They do.
Masks, vaccines, whatever, whether that's right or wrong, right? It's just, tell me what to do. Darn it, I'm going to do the opposite. That's just the American way. We're Americans. We're going to be, okay. What if we were to use a scientific approach and say, look, how long is that stretch? 12 miles?
The work zone itself is about
15 miles?
About 13.
Okay, say 13 miles. Someone should do a calculation and post it widely, put it on the news thing. You can report it. We'll report it. Let's say that you have a trip planned from here to O'Fallon, Missouri. Okay? Or somewhere on 70, Lake St. Louis. Okay. And going at 70 miles an hour and other posted speed limits in the area that you're going to. What difference does it make in your ETA if you, for 13 miles, slow down to 50? You think it would make a minute? Maybe a minute and a half, maybe.
That.
And maybe that's what people don't realize. It's psychologically, they think, my God, I'm not going to get, well, wait a minute. It's really, realistically, if you go by the speed limit, it's not a big deal.
It isn't, and there has been more aggressive. You're spot on. I mean, you're preaching to the choir. It also puts these workers that are in this construction zone at risk. And I've heard from, look at the Facebook page. You can see the workers are furious that these people are speeding. And I remind our listeners that don't want to be told what to do. I'm going to remind them, Randy, of one thing. I'm old enough to remember the speed limit under Richard Milhouse Nixon in this country was 55 miles an hour at one point. And you know what? It was enforced.
Yeah,
it was.
You're right. And again, I'm no goody two shoes. Of course, sometimes, once in a while, it tips a little bit over the speed limit, 2 or 3 miles an hour. Yeah, I'm not that. But come on, guys.
Well, they're going. People are saying those semis are going 90 through that work zone.
Whoa.
Yes.
All right. You think you're not going to have any taxes on your Social Security? Well, it's not that simple. That and leftovers when we come back.
This is
this morning and every morning. Tomorrow we're going to be talking with Elias Tsapelis, who's a big budget guy down at Show Me Institute, about the impact of the big, beautiful bill and Governor Kehoe's vetoes on everyday Missourians like you and me. And what does it mean, right? One of those things, Stephanie, that I wanted to talk about we call it the leftover section, but it's important. You know how the promise was no tax on Social Security. How do you think most people receiving Social Security think that through? What do they interpret that?
I think that means no tax. I think the tips thing is similar. It's very detailed.
But for progressives who say, oh, well, what do you mean? Well, actually, they want to tax people that earn more. Progressives like progressive taxes, right? That's what these provisions do. All this Social Security provision does is it includes a $6,000 tax deduction for Americans 65 years or older. And as I understand it, it's one time, I think. It's maybe a year or two. It's not forever. And all that does is it goes towards any taxes you would pay. But if you're making an awful lot and you get in Social Security, you're still going to pay taxes on some of that Social Security.
I think that's right.
Yeah. So for high income earners, they're still going to pay some taxes. Now, it raises, I think, that for the people where the deduction exceeds their otherwise tax liability, that goes from about 64% to about 84% of recipients. So there'll be about 16% at the top who are still going to pay taxes, right?
Yeah, and there are people who get tips who this won't really affect because a lot of folks who earn tips are low enough on the scale that they don't pay a lot of federal income tax. Right. It won't affect them. And then also if they're high earner tip wage earners, then it phases out.
Right.
And so there are people who think they probably are going to benefit from the quote-unquote no tax on tips that won't receive those benefits. So
we'll be talking with Elias Tsapelis about that. And we also have tomorrow a guest on from Reason.
We've been covering quite a bit from Reason Magazine. It's one of my favorite publications, and they put out some really good stuff. Peter Suderman will join us. He hosts their weekly podcast and is a writer and editor for them. We'll talk to him about the libertarian perspective on the big, beautiful bill, as well as their perspective on, I heard them discuss it a little bit, on Elon saying he's going to start a third party, and Trump says a third party silly, and I think the libertarians are like, wait a minute, we have a third party. So we'll get their perspective.
But remember a couple cycles ago, didn't one of the candidates take his clothes off or something at the libertarian? They do some crazy things at those Libertarian Party meetings. Remember that, John?
They're a fun group.
I do remember that.
Yeah, a guy started taking his clothes off.
They're a fun group.
Well,
they believe in full drug legalization, so maybe that was part of it.
Yeah, right.
All right. I have a leftover.
What do you have?
One of my favorite things is when two of my favorite things come together in an unexpected way, and I did not have this on my 2025 bingo card, but Nelly has bought so two of my favorite things, Nelly, number one.
Okay.
Tacos is way up there, but Nelly and tacos is not involved in this story. Horse racing.
Yeah.
So Nelly has bought a horse racing team.
Okay.
And he's going to debut it. It's called the St. Louis Nellies at the Nelly Cup at Fairmont, which is just across in Illinois, on July 19th at the first ever NTL, which is the National Thoroughbred League Nelly Cup. And the event is free to the public, no tickets necessary. Yeah. It will feature a Nelly-inspired fashion show and a greeting and trophy presentation from Nelly himself.
Something different than broad-brimmed hats and mint juleps.
No, I think you can rock that with Nelly, but maybe...
Are you going to be there?
I might.
I could see you there.
I need to check my calendar.
Okay.
You'll want to hydrate, though, if you take the tour of the stables, because Nelly says it's hot in here.
All right. John, you got anything going on?
and on that note, Governor Mike Kehoe was at the Unilever plant in Jefferson City to show off the company's new liquid IV line, an $80 million production line for that hydration drink.
Yeah, we've seen some folks that are making that product from Unilever. Yeah. All right, that'll wrap it up for Wake Up Missouri this morning. See you tomorrow. Have a good one.